Hello there, it's Megan from Santa Maria, and today I'm here in front of my scholarly bookshelf with my amazing eyeglasses and professorial tweed jacket with a fake British accent because it's said that Americans trust people with British accents more. Today our topic is, I can't do the British accent guys, I'm sorry. Today our topic is, was Jesus a zombie and did he actually rise from the dead? So spoiler alert, the answer is no, he's not a zombie. Yes, he rose from the dead. So just to clarify the zombie thing, a zombie is a fictional character, which is sort of this like reanimated corpse thing that like goes around eating people's brains. Okay, not what Jesus is. First of all, he was not a fictional character. There's no historian worth their salt who would say that the man Jesus was a myth. He actually did exist. So that part's proven. Okay, then we get to the part where did he actually rise from the dead, or was this just some sort of like hallucination thing? So for this, we're going to put Jesus on trial. We're going to call this the case for the resurrection, because just like for a legal trial, when the judge and the jury weren't actually there, they look at things called evidence. So first, we're going to use a science called textual criticism to figure out if the accounts that we have of the resurrection are actually trustworthy or not. So this science takes copies of ancient texts and they look at how far away from the original date of writing the earliest existing copy is, and then how many of those copies we actually have. So the closer the date to the original time of the events, the more reliable it is. And the more copies you have, the more you can correlate what they're saying together, which means the more reliable it is. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple works that no historian is going to debate the validity of or the authorship of. For example, Herodotus. He was a historian who wrote around 480 BC. However, the first copy that we have written down is from 1300 years later in AD 900. And there are only 8 copies of Herodotus's works. The same is true for Thucydides and for Livy's Roman history. Caesar's Gallic War, the historian Tacitus, these were all people who wrote with maybe 900 to 1,000 years between the date of writing and the actual first copies we have. And there's only between 8 and 20 copies of them. The New Testament, however, was written between 80, 40, and 100, and the earliest copies we have are from 130, which means only like 30 years different, maybe. And in addition, the number of copies we have far surpasses the number of copies of other historical documents. For example, there are 5,000 Greek copies of the New Testament, 10,000 in Latin, and 9,300 in other ancient languages like Aramaic. This is probably the most well-documented, clearest example of an historical text that we can find today. It's pretty crazy. So we can say that the things that happened in it were very accurate in terms of the original authors. So now we got to figure out, are the original authors trustworthy? So we can determine a few things from what happened in the New Testament. First of all, as we established, Jesus was a real person. Then he died. He was put in a known tomb. Then his disciples found the tomb empty. The historian Tacitus, we already mentioned him, was writing a letter. And he said something about Jesus the Galilean named Christ, and he was put to death by one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate. And then my favorite line is that after that, a most mischievous superstition broke out in Judea and Rome that he'd risen from the dead. So even the Roman authorities were aware that this was such a widespread story that the disciples were telling. And it was becoming so dangerous to spread this story that you could be put to death for it. But did that stop them from telling their story? No. They believed it so truly in their heart that they didn't stop telling this part, even though it was the part that was causing them to die. Now, if the disciples had made up this story, I think at the point where they were threatened with death, they would start saying, oh, sorry guys, this is just like a big joke. Jesus really didn't rise from the dead. I didn't really see him. We didn't have dinner together. I'm sorry. Like, ha 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 ha. Don't kill me. Okay, but they didn't. They really, truly believed and were willing to be put to death for the belief that they'd had an experience of Christ risen from the dead. And you might say, well, maybe this is a hallucination. Maybe they were just thinking they saw or experienced Christ. That might be the case for 1 or 2 people, but the consistency with which the stories happened, the regularity, the number of people, it makes it highly unlikely, especially since at one point over 500 people saw the exact same thing and had the exact same experience with Christ after the resurrection. So if you put 500 people out there who are saying the same thing and they saw the same thing at the same time, it's pretty trustworthy. So what I would encourage you to do is if you have more questions about the validity of the resurrection of Jesus, go read through the book of Acts and see whether or not those accounts of the early disciples seem compelling to you. Go look up other historians to see what it is that they say about Jesus. And I also tucked a couple resources down below if you'd prefer to read about it. And I encourage you guys to read them because the resurrection wasn't just a historical event, but it's also an event that continues to affect our lives today. That 2,000 years later, people were still being affected by Jesus, the risen Lord, who has given them life. And so even if after reading those things you're a little skeptical, go ask somebody that you know is close with Christ, who is devoted to their faith, and ask them what their experience of the risen Lord is, because there's nothing like a witness testimony of someone that you know and love to help you understand the full story. So thank you for watching and for listening to my amazing American accent and my British foolery, and we'll talk to you later. Cheerio!